Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 9th and tonight's movie is Hostile Dimensions. This movie is one I'm excited for. It was directed by Graham Hughes, who also directed Death of a Vlogger, which is one of the best movies I have ever seen for Horror Nights. Death of the Vlogger did the influencer horror movie perfectly. It had the right amount of satire and commentary while also just being a great horror movie on its own. So am I expecting Hostile Dimensions to be just as great? No, but I am expecting it to at least be good. This is a camera POV / found footage movie about this person who disappears into this weird door that leads to another dimension. There's a lot of multiverses and hopping between dimensions in the trailer. Right off the bat, this movie reminds me a lot of The Backrooms. There's a lot of spaces that look like Earth and the reality we live in, but there's just something off. And there are also a few parts that are a lot less subtle. There was a monster with these writhing tentacles. There was a point where in the background there was this colossal megalophobia humanoid, and that effect actually looked terrible. It looked like album art from the 90s. Death of a Vlogger kept me guessing until the very end, and there's a lot of potential for twists and turns here. I'm excited. I'm gonna go check it out. This movie was kind of like Cobweb from last year, where it's like, right when I'm done watching it, I'm feeling like a certain way about it, but like the more it sits with me, the more problems I can find with it. I think I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10. It is very entertaining, but when you compare it to Death of a Vlogger, there is no contest. Speaking of Death of a Vlogger, the two leads in this movie were two actors from that movie. One of them I recognized almost immediately. She was like the skeptic woman, the internet sleuth from Death of a Vlogger. In this movie, she plays Ash, and whenever they refer to Ash, they always use they, them pronouns, so I guess Ash is genderqueer, I don't know. And the main character is Sam, who's played by the same actress who played the vlogger's girlfriend in Death of a Vlogger. That is something I didn't pick up until almost the very end of the movie. I think that my most substantial criticism of Hostile Dimensions might seem kind of petty and unwarranted, but it really is a problem. The effects in this movie are god-awful. They look so cheap. They look like something you would see on TikTok or like a made-for-TV Hallmark movie or something. It doesn't look professional in the slightest. It doesn't just break my immersion, it makes me feel like this movie is messing with me, like it's supposed to be a comedy or something. And it's possible that the budget for this movie was not the best. It was like an indie production. That's fine. You know what else probably didn't have that high of a budget? The original Backrooms video. Kane Parsons was 16 when he published it. It was probably just something he did in his spare time. And it still looks exponentially better than this movie. Granted, Kane Pixels probably is some kind of filmmaking savant, but still, people can find a way. And no, I'm not turning up my nose at the fact that this movie couldn't create hyper-realistic alternate dimensions out of CG or stuff like that. But when even something as simple as making a dog look like it's talking looks like garbage, it has a negative effect on the overall feeling of quality. That is my main criticism of Hostile Dimensions. There's also the fact that the ending felt really rushed, but I'm not going to go into detail about that until I go into the spoiler part of the review. So that was something that didn't work from this movie. What did work is the same sort of writing and humor that you got in Death of a Vlogger. Grant Hughes knows how to write good dialogue. And it somehow strikes this perfect balance of injecting humor when necessary, but still making the whole thing feel serious. At least if you can ignore the effects. When it comes to horror, I don't really know how scary this movie was even trying to be. It really just feels a bit more like a sci-fi thriller. But there were a couple moments of decent horror throughout this movie. There also was, like, decent little bits of world building when they go into these different dimensions. They don't stay in any of them for very long, so it doesn't really fully develop. There also is a genuinely good plot twist about halfway through the movie. But by the time it was over, it just didn't feel that consequential. Death of a Vlogger was like a moment. This was apparently a project that was made to, like, pave the way or, like, set the stage for a much bigger project later on for Graham Hughes, and that is what it feels like. So while it is entertaining and it can be very creative, overall, it's just kind of a disappointment considering how good Death of a Vlogger was. And now I want to talk about some spoilers. This movie starts out by looking at what I guess is like a viral video of these two urban explorers going to an abandoned building. One was the camera guy, the other was a graffiti artist, and the graffiti artist disappears in this mysterious door. Two documentarians, Sam and Ash, want to make a movie about it, so they track down the uploader of the video. And they just take the door and bring it back to one of their apartments. They do actually find the missing woman from the original video. But when they get the person that they tracked down at the beginning of the movie and bring him back to her, she says something like, "Where's Brian?" or "Who is this?" And that's when it's revealed that this was an imposter. And then he, like, knocks out everybody in the room with a stun gun or a taser, which is not what a taser does. Maybe he got that from another dimension, I don't know. And then he kidnaps Ash and drags them through the door. And they reference earlier in the movie that there are these like ancient legends of different dimensions and how ancient people would sacrifice people to those dimensions in order to, I don't know, appease the gods, prevent an apocalypse. The Brian imposter references working with a god, so I guess he made some sort of deal with an entity. So Sam and the formerly missing girl, Emily, they go into the door to try to get Ash back. Which we eventually do, but then we get something that really feels like it comes out of nowhere. There were a couple points in the movie where Sam talks about being like dissatisfied with her life. Like her mom died and she feels helpless, but that seems like a far cry from what actually ends up happening with her. She decides, no, you go back without me. I'm going to be an interdimensional hopper myself and like try to find a better world or something. And that just felt so out of pocket. And I referenced in the first part that there was an effect of the dog's mouth moving, and that one really does look awful. But on a few occasions when they open the doors, they're greeted with this black void and this crusty white dog who talks in this deep voice. And the last part of the movie is the group of characters at some unspecified amount of time later making contact with that dog and learning how to change the world or something. This movie sets up for a sequel that I sincerely doubt they're ever going to make. And then the movie just ends. Before I go, I want to talk about the best moment in the movie and the worst moment in the movie. The best moment in the movie was a joke. It wasn't like a moment of horror or drama, but it actually was a good, funny moment. Right after Ash gets kidnapped, the two of the characters, Sam and Innes, a guy that they find along the way, are discussing what to do. And Innes asks Sam if they're going to call the police, and she says, "No cops." And then a moment later, he says, "Okay, Captain ACAB." And there's like this pause. It's impressive how they could perfectly slide in an awkward moment of someone trying to lighten the mood with a joke and it not working and that being funny. Like, that actually was a very good moment. And then the worst moment of the movie is actually towards the very end. You think that the Brian imposter is dead, but he's not. And he's like saying to his god, "Smite down these three." And then he gets struck by lightning, and there's a lot of competition, but that one lightning effect might actually be the worst effect in the entire movie. It legitimately looked like something you would see on Vine in like 2014. To close, Hostile Dimensions was a really mixed bag. There are some very good things in it, there are also some very bad things in it. Overall, there is still like a sort of charm to the movie for most of it, but it is disappointing compared to Death of a Vlogger. Apparently, Graham Hughes is working on a much bigger project later on, and I will be interested in seeing that, but yeah, this wasn't really that impressive. Alright, thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.